Hello everyone, welcome back. Hope you are all going through the e-learning process inside your home. Be safe, stay inside your home. So, in the last class the last topic discussed was heating effect of electric current. So the thing is that this new chapter, the magnetic effects of electric current, that's the next chapter of your syllabus, or an introduction to electromagnetism, you can say. This actually starts with the question, the quest for finding some other kind of effects of electric current. The last topic of last lecture was heating effect of electric current. That was only one effect of electric current. There are other basically two primary effects of electric current. That one is magnetic effect of electric current, and another one is chemical effect of electric current. The magnetic effect of electric current we will discuss in this video part by part, and the chemical effect of electric current you will get in later classes. But as like the other video, I will go on explaining the keywords first. But before that, one thing that has to be noted, I will request you everyone to please listen this properly, that these kind of chapters, these electricity and magnetism kind of chapters, are completely based on experimental observations. First, scientists, I can say, first people observed some phenomena, then they studied those phenomena, why the things are happening in this way. Then they related with whatever they had studied, and then they established the reason behind those kind of phenomena. And to prove those phenomena, they have developed some experimental setups and then found out the experimentally verified conclusions that later on became theories. So the thing is, during this chapter, you have to imagine a lot of things, and you have to first understand that these theories were not the first things. First, phenomena were there, then the phenomena were observed by someone, then those persons who observed those phenomena tried to think what is the reason behind this phenomena, and then finally established with whatever he has studied, and then developed some theories. These theories we are studying now. It's not possible to show you the experimental setups every time. So I will request you to develop a power of imagination, then thinking, then the ability to questioning, and then relating with whatever you are studying now, with whatever you have studied, and bridge between these phenomena and logics. You have to relate, you have to understand and bridge between whatever you have learned and whatever the phenomena you have observed. So without wasting time, let's go on the lessons. One more thing I want to tell you, that this is very much important to learn electricity first and then magnetism. So if you have not seen the video of the last class, then please first see that video, then this video will be helpful. I am giving the description link, the link of that video in the description. So let us start with the introduction to electromagnetism. In this video, we will systematically study one by one key points of this chapter that I have told earlier, that these points are essential while understanding this chapter. So the key points are, we will study first magnet, then magnetic materials, magnetism, magnetic field, comparison between electric and magnetic field, Oersted experiments, Faraday's experiment, and at last we will observe a natural phenomena from our daily life, and we will try to establish the logic behind that. So the first question is, what is a magnet? There are many definitions of magnet starting from class standard 6 onwards. Here I have taken a definition. A magnet is a material or object that produces a magnetic field. So this magnetic field is an important keyword to note down during the study of this chapter, magnetism. This magnetic field is invisible, but is responsible for most of the notable property of a magnet. A force that pulls on other ferromagnetic materials such as iron and attracts or repels other magnet. Here, ferromagnetic material is a keyword, magnetic field. So you have to understand first what is a magnetic field and what are ferromagnetic material. There are some kind of materials which are attracted by magnet, and there are some other kind of materials which are not attracted by magnet. Those materials which are attracted by magnet has been divided into some kind of types like paramagnetic, ferromagnetic, like this. So basically now you understand that there are some kind of materials which are known as magnetic materials which are attracted by magnet. These are some kind of examples of some magnetic materials: nickel knife, cobalt coin, steel spoon, iron nail. These materials are attracted by magnet. So these kind of materials which are attracted by magnet are called magnetic materials, and those materials which are not attracted by magnet are called non-magnetic material. Then the second thing is produces a magnetic field. This magnetic field, we shall study in detail about this magnetic field, because this is a very important aspect of this chapter. Moving on to next slide. Yes, what is magnetism? Magnetism is a force of attraction or repulsion that acts as a distance. It means is a non-contact force. Mind it, magnetic force is a non-contact force. So this magnetism is a force of attraction or repulsion that acts at a distance. It is due to the magnetic field which is caused by moving electrically charged particles or is inherent in magnetic objects such as magnet. Now, the thing is, first point, that it attracts or repels at a distance. It means magnetic force is a non-contact force. Second thing, it is due to the magnetic field. As we have studied the electric field, we will study this magnetic field also. Now this line, which is caused by moving electrically charged particles. We have studied electrically charged particles. We have studied the electricity chapter in this regard, the movement of these electrically charged particles, that current, electricity. We will study how these moving electrically charged particles are related to magnetism. On the second point is inherent in magnetic objects such as magnet. It means magnet, if you go to some lower class definitions, you will get a brief history of how magnet has been discovered, how this magnet has been developed into modern days shapes and variety kind of things. So you will get that property, you will get in this table, inherent in magnetic objects such as magnet. I am not going into these details of magnetic history and discovery of magnets like that. Now, this is the very important property, magnetic field. As in the earlier class of electricity, I have told you that electric field is an area in which the influence of a charge is felt by other charged object or other charged body. Like that, similarly, magnetic field is also an area. Suppose this is a magnet. This is a kind of area under which the influence of this magnet can be felt by other magnetic materials or by some other magnets. If there is any other magnetic materials is placed over here, this magnet will attract that. And if a magnet is placed over here, then two things may happen that we will know gradually, that if a magnet is placed over here, what will happen? It will attract or repel depending on some conditions. Now, this is a kind of magnetic field. These are the various magnetic fields shown under different shapes. If two north poles are placed in this way, if a north and south is combined in this way, what will be the area up to which this influence will be felt? What will be the direction? Now this direction is a very important thing. As in the earlier video also, in the case while we are studying electric field, I have told you that this direction in magnetic field or electric field is very essential one to study. Now how this direction is determined, let us study that. Here this diagram has, I have shown this diagram in the earlier slide, in the earlier discussion of electricity. So I am recalling this. So this is a electric field from an isolated positive charge. this is an electric field from an isolated negative charge. It means this is a positive charge, this is a negative charge. This is the area up to which the influence of this charge is felt by other charged objects, and this is the area up to which its influence can be felt by other charged objects. Now, to determine the direction of the magnetic electric field, this is taken as a source charge, which may be a positive charge or a negative charge, and a test charge is taken, which is always considered as a positive charge. Now, if the test charge is placed in this electric field, we know that the property of charged object is same kind of charge repels each other and opposite charges attracts each other. Now, if the test charge is positive, definitely this positive charge will repel that one. So this direction of electric field is the direction in which a unit positive test charge will move when placed in an electric field of positive source charge. So a positive source charge will repel a positive test charge. That's why the direction is outward. And in this video, if a positive test charge, as the test charge is always taken as unit positive, so a negative charge will definitely attract a positive charge. So the direction of the field is inwards here. This same kind of concept is implied in the case of magnetic field. In case of a magnetic field, in determining the direction of magnetic field, here north pole is taken as one source, south pole is another source. Now, to determine, and this is the area under which these magnets, these bar shaped magnets influence can be felt. Now, there is a difference. This is a pole, north pole, and this is a south pole. And a magnet always comes with two poles. Magnet cannot exist in only one pole. See, in a charge can be isolated in its own. A positive charge can exist in its own. It does not require a negative essentially charge to stay with it. But a north pole always needs a south pole. Magnet cannot stay in a single pole. Magnets are always, they have to be two poles in it. In any magnet, if you cannot say there is only one pole. So in any magnet there should be two poles. Now, in case of determining the magnetic field, if the source charge is a test charge that I have taken, I have said earlier that the test charge is taken as a unit positive charge. In case of magnetic field, the test pole is taken as a north pole. So, if you place a north pole, north will repel north, so the direction is outwards, and south will attract a north pole, so the direction is inwards. So the direction of north pole, the area in influence in this north pole will be outward, and the magnetic field relating to the south pole will be, the direction will be inwards. So here you have to have a basic clear concept regarding this direction of magnetic and electric field, and this is the similarity between electric and magnetic field. That is why this chapter, this electromagnetism, this is how we are relating this kind of things. As I have told earlier, that these chapters are actually experimentally based chapters. So first phenomena are observed, and then we try to establish the relationship between various kinds of facts. This is the behavior of electric field was studied, the behavior of magnetic field was studied. Then a relationship was tried to be established between this electric and magnetic field. Now we are heading onwards to some immense important experiments and observations resulting to discoveries of very, very important theories. The first one is Oersted experiment. Hans Christian Oersted accidentally, while working in his lab someday, discovered a peculiar phenomena, that a magnetic needle placed nearby an electric coil, just while current was passing through it, the needle deflected. Then he started observing the phenomena in a systematic way. What did he observe? He observed that in the absence of current in the coil, the needle came to completely rest in Earth's north-south direction. Why it happens that this magnet stays generally in a north-south direction, that is a question. But let's not discuss it now. Let's discuss to this Oersted experiment. What Oersted observed was that a magnetic needle was kept in nearby an electric coil, in which electric coil, not actually coil, an electric wire, where a potential difference was applied. When current was flowing through the circuit, he found a deflection in the magnetic needle. He observed that if current was flowing through the circuit, then the needle shows a deflection. This needle will show a deflection when current is flowing through the circuit. He also observed that this direction of deflection of the needle becomes opposite. Here the needle, see, becomes opposite if the direction of the current flowing is reversed. The thing is, here you see the positive end of the battery is connected in this direction. So the current is flowing in this direction from here to here. In this case, the needle will deflect in this direction. He observed that if the direction of the current is reversed, the direction of the battery is reversed, now current is flowing through this direction, the deflection is opposite. It means that the deflection of this magnetic needle depends entirely on the direction of flow of electric current. He also observed that the amount of deflection becomes less while growing away from the source. Now if this is the source, in this case this is the source and this is the testing agency. So if the needle is kept somewhere away from the source, then the amount of deflection becomes less. It means these have an influence over an area only. While you are going away from that source, the amount of deflection decreases. So what did he conclude from the experiment? This is very much important. Oersted established the relationship between electricity and magnetism. He concluded that a current carrying wire produces a magnetic field around it, because this is a magnetic needle. This was a magnetic needle which earlier people thought that have no connection with any kind of electricity and all. But accidentally Oersted established the relationship that this was a completely circuit in which current was flowing through, and this is a magnetic needle. When current is flowing through this circuit, then the magnetic needle shows a deflection. So there is definitely some connections between this magnetic kind of things and electricity kind of things. So he concluded that a current carrying wire produces a magnetic field around it. This is the conclusion of Oersted's experiment, a famous experiment in the field of establishing the relationship between electric and magnetic field, electricity and magnetism, which is in further it's known as actually combining, which is known as electromagnetism. Here to note down another thing is also, here what we are doing here, we are actually sending over a current in the coil and we are observing a deflection in the magnetic needle. Now what if the things is reversed, if the things is like changed, if we move a magnet over around an area or over an area, what is there any kind of change in the electric circuit? We will observe this now. So here, an English physicist, Michael Faraday, studied a reverse phenomena. He hypothesized that a changing magnetic field is necessary to induce a current in a nearby circuit. He just hypothesized this. It means he thought, studying this Oersted experiment, what was the conclusion? The conclusion that if we are sending current through this circuit, a nearby magnetic needle feels a influence. It means it shows a deflection, means it feels an influence over it. Now Michael Faraday hypothesized that if we change a magnetic field, then there will be a current induced in the nearby circuit. He designed an experiment in this way. To test this hypothesis, he made a coil by wrapping up a paper cylinder with wire. He connected the coil to a galvanometer. This galvanometer is actually a device which is used to detect the presence of current in a circuit. He connected the coil to a galvanometer and then moved a magnet back and forth against the cylinder. Means suppose this coil is around the cylinder and the magnet is moving inside and outside the cylinder. It means in a nearby area the magnet is moving to and back and forth. At starting, when the magnet is at rest, there is no deflection in the galvanometer. Means when this magnet is in rest, the galvanometer shows no deflection. Means there is no presence of current in the coil. Clear? Then when the magnet is moved towards the coil, if the magnet is moved towards the coil, the needle of the galvanometer shows deflection in one direction. When the magnet is moved towards the coil, the galvanometer shows deflection in one direction. Okay, and then if the magnet is kept stationary at that position, then also the galvanometer shows no deflection. It means only when the magnet was moving towards this coil, the galvanometer showed deflection in one direction. And again, when the magnet was kept stationary, no deflection was in the galvanometer. And what he observed again? When he took this magnet away from the coil, there is again some deflection but in the opposite direction. There is again some deflection but in the opposite direction. Means when the magnet was moving towards the coil, the deflection was the galvanometer was in one direction. When the magnet was moving away from the coil, the galvanometer showed deflection in another direction. Here are some important aspects. He also observed that similarly, if the magnet is kept constant, kept stationary, and the coil is moved, similar kind of deflection is shown. Means if the magnet is kept over stationary and the coil is taken towards this magnet, then the galvanometer shows deflection in one direction. And if the coil is again moved away from the magnet, then the galvanometer shows deflection in other direction. So what was his observations? Induced current is produced. Induced means it's just produced it has been induced in the circuit. It was not earlier. Only it is produced when there is something happening. It's inducing. Whenever it means induced current is produced whenever there is relative motion between the coil and the magnet. Very, very important thing to understand. Relative motion between coil and the magnet. Only current will produce when there is a motion between coil and magnet. If there is no motion between this coil and magnet, there will be no current flowing through the circuit. Movement is very much essential. See, in case of current electricity, the current field was also related only when the charge was moving. When the charge was at rest, no current was flowing through the circuit. We cannot say that current is flowing. That was completely electrostatics. Current electricity only comes when there is a movement of charge. Similarly, this current will only be there when there is a relative motion between coil and magnet. If there is no motion between coil and magnet, there will be no induced current. The strength of the induced current depends on the rate of relative motion. If the rate of relative motion, it means if the motion is to some extent, the relative motion is more, then the strength of the induced current is also more. When the coil and the magnet are rest relative to each other, there is no induced current. It means both. It means that there should be a relative motion. Without this kind of motion, there will be no current flowing through the circuit. Now from these observations, he concluded that whenever there is a relative motion between a conductor and a magnetic field, it induces a potential difference across the coil. Because you know that if the current is flowing, there have to be a potential difference. Without potential difference, no current can flow. No current can flow in the circuit. So, when there is a relative motion between a conductor and a magnetic field, then there is an induced potential difference across the coil, which sets up an induced correcting circuit. Finally, the conclusion was that whenever there is a relative motion between a conductor and a magnetic field, it induces a potential difference across the coil, which actually sends out an electric current in the circuit. From these conclusions, he later on Faraday gave a very famous law, which is known as Faraday's law of electromagnetic induction. You will get this law in higher classes, in class 12. Basically the first and second law, depending which is stating what will be the kind of flow of electric charge, how this induction behaves, how this entire phenomena actually happens, what will be the amount of this potential difference, what will be this amount of induced potential difference, how will this behave. You will get some laws of Faraday's in higher classes. Now, as we are studying here relative motion between a magnet and a coil, we will also see a similar kind of activity. Here what we are doing, here we are actually balancing, we are actually mixing up the Oersted and the Faraday's experiment. See, the Oersted experiment, what it told, that a current through a circuit produces a magnetic field. And what Faraday told, that changing a magnetic field will induce a current in the galvanometer. Now this changing a magnetic field produces electric current. We are doing another activity to actually merge these two experiments, Oersted and Faraday's experiment. What we are doing, we are taking two coils of wires round around a cylinder paper roll. This is a cylinder paper roll. We have made two coils here. We will observe two coils over here, where one coil is connected to a battery and the other coil is connected to a galvanometer. Means in this circuit there is a source. Current can flow through this circuit. But here the galvanometer is actually detecting the presence of current in a circuit. But we are introducing the galvanometer to this circuit where there is no source. Now if current is passed through the first coil, the galvanometer needle shows a deflection in the second coil. If the current is disconnected, then the needle shows in opposite direction. This shows that current is induced in the changing magnetic field. Means when we are giving connection through this key, current is flowing through this circuit, and when current is flowing through this circuit, this is producing a magnetic field. Now when there is a magnetic field, this magnetic field influences this secondary circuit. This is called as a primary coil, this is a secondary coil. Whenever we are doing with two kinds of coil, primary coils has more turns in it, secondary coils has less number of turns. Now when current is flowing through this circuit, it has a magnetic field around it. This magnetic field is influencing this coil, and so that magnetic field induces a current in this circuit. When we reverse the direction of this battery, the direction of flow of current will also change, will also be opposite, and the deflection in the galvanometer is also opposite. It means this activity is actually verifying both the Oersted and the Faraday's experiment. The Oersted experiment in this case, that this electric circuit is producing a magnetic field around it, and the verification for Faraday's law is that this galvanometer, in which no source of current is introduced in this circuit, there is no cell introduced in the circuit, still the galvanometer is showing deflection in both direction. When current is flowing in one direction, the galvanometer deflects in one direction. When the direction of current is reversed, the deflection is also reversed. So through this activity we can actually verify both the Oersted and the Faraday's experiment. So now with all these discussions, we actually come to a conclusion that here I have mentioned experimentally found. Means more and more times I am saying these chapters like current, electricity, magnetism, both these chapters are completely experimentally observed chapters. These entire phenomena are developed on some experimental results, then the logics are established. So we can say experimentally that electricity and magnetism are the two sides of the same coin. Means wherever there is electricity, there is a kind of magnetism related with it, with some kind of phenomenons, and whenever there is some kind of magnetism, there is associated some kind of electricity. These two conclusions from the Oersted and the Faraday's experiment are in actually simplified in this manner, that every time an electric charge moves, a magnetic field is produced. See, charge moves, it means whenever a current is flowing. Charge moves means a current is flowing. Every time an electric charge moves, a magnetic field is produced. Means a magnetic field is always related to an electric field. If a charge is moving, there is an electric field, and as there is an electric field, there is definitely a connection with a magnetic field. And every time a magnetic field varies, an electric field is created. Every time a magnetic field is varies means the magnetic field should change. It means there should be a motion between the magnetic field and the current carrying conductor or the circuit. So there is definitely a connection between electricity and magnetism. We cannot separate electricity from magnetism. We cannot separate magnetism from electricity. Therefore it comes to be combined together as electromagnetism. That is what is called as electromagnetism. So in this introductory class we have completely studied the assimilation of electricity and magnetism. This study will further continue in the next part. So coming to the last topic of this discussion, I have told you that as this chapter is depending on some results, depending on some experimental observations, I told you that we have to observe a natural phenomena and then we have to think. See, all of us, I think every one of us know that a bar magnet, basically a bar magnet is suspended freely, comes to a direction of north and south. It means this north and south is the Earth's geographical north and geographical south. So this kind of chapter, this electricity, electromagnetism, this kind of chapters are developed first with some natural phenomena observation. This was already a phenomena that if we suspend a bar magnet freely, it comes to a north-south position. Now the question is, first you have to observe, then you have to think and question. Why does the magnetic poles point to north-south? There is definitely a question that if we are letting this to move freely, what is the reason that this magnet is coming to a north-south direction? We have to think, and then we have to establish the logic and relate with what we have learned. Now the logic is established. The logic is that as it's found that this is the geographic, suppose this is the geographic north of our Earth and this is the geographic south. It is observed or it is hypothesized that this Earth has its own magnetic field. The Earth has its own magnetic field means this Earth itself behaves like a magnet. There is a huge magnet inside this Earth, and the geographic north of the Earth attracts in this geographic direction. As this is north pole, it will have the south pole of the magnet in it. It means the geographic north of the Earth is the magnetic south pole of the Earth, and then the geographic south of the Earth is actually the magnetic north of the magnet of the Earth. So it means whatever we are calling as geographically north, it is the magnetic south of the Earth. Whatever we are calling geographic south, it is the magnetic north of the Earth. So when we suspend a magnet freely, when we suspend a bar magnet freely, it comes to north-south direction. Means that small bar magnet, the north pole of that bar magnet is attracted by this south pole, and the south pole of that bar magnet is attracted by this north pole. That is why the north pole of a bar magnet simplifies towards the north pole, because this south is actually the geographic north and this north is actually the geographic south. So the magnetic needle or the small bar magnet will show the north pole of that bar magnet will point out towards south pole of the Earth's magnet, and the north pole of north side of the Earth, geographic Earth. Means the bar magnet will show the north pole of the Earth, geographic north pole of the Earth, and the south pole of the bar magnet will show the geographic south of the Earth. So this was just an observation to natural phenomena. So this, up to this we are discussing today. In the later part, in the next part of this video, we shall discuss the other kind of magnetic field lines produced by the various shapes and size of electric fields.